Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. It is the third in a series of webinars as part of our Green Ribbon Month, and you're very welcome today. And today we're covering an important topic in relation to reframing mental illness and exploring stigma in the traveller community. So I just want to tell you, my name is Nicola Byrne, I'm the CEO of Shine, and we have been doing a lot of work up and down the country in the month of September to raise awareness and reduce stigma, encouraging people to wear the green ribbon. And we're asking people to wear the green ribbon as a symbol of your willingness to talk about your own experience of mental health and mental illness, encouraging conversations where we will reduce stigma, and hopefully it encourages people to seek help sooner and recover quicker. So Shine is an organisation that was set up in 1979 by a group of family members in Dublin. And our aim is to support individuals with lived experience of mental health difficulties or mental illness. We promote individual recovery for relatives and supporters. And in order to do that, we also work to remove stigma and increase recovery rates. We do this in a number of different ways. So not only do we offer free frontline services to people with lived experience and separately to their family members, we also have a workplace programme and we work with the media programme as well. So we work with the media around reducing stigma and improving conversations in the media about this issue. And as I said already, we have the Green Ribbon campaign, which we run in the month of September every year. So there's a lot of different ways that we do this, and I mentioned that we do it in three different ways. One is we provide support, secondly we advocate, and third we educate. So I mentioned that we provide support for people with lived experience and separately for family members and supporters. So you can be supporting someone, but you don't need to be genetically related to them. You could be their partner or a very good friend, and we will offer you support there as well. And we do this in three different ways. So we offer information and support one-to-one in groups. We have media clinics, and we offer journalism fellowships to support better stories in the media. We advocate through our Green Ribbon programme. We have our ambassador programme. We do media monitoring, the Mental Health Media Awards, and we have a voice platform and the reference group, which is at the centre of our national mental health policy. We also offer education programs to the media in workplaces, recovery education workshops, and we also offer specialist webinars, and we do some research as well to support that work. So why wear the green ribbon? It's a really important question, and sometimes people get the green ribbon and they're not sure why they ought to wear it. It offers symbolism and visibility. It's a simple and meaningful symbol and a conversation starter. It also is a way of reducing stigma, so it challenges negative perceptions and combats self-stigma. The more we see people wearing the green ribbon, the more we know how prevalent mental health issues and mental illness is in our country. So we promote conversations and we offer support. We encourage openness and building community and signalling solidarity. The Green Ribbon campaign is in September, and Shine supplies and promotes free green ribbons to spark conversations. Right now we're at the ploughing championships. We did electric picnic. We have lots of events going on up and down the country, big and small. We've online events, and we have all sorts of conversations going on in tea rooms in the workplace and in universities at the moment. We offer partnership and alignment. So we're supported by the National Office for Suicide Prevention, and it's part of the strategies like Connecting for Life. We also want to work on community and system change. This is not a campaign. We want to offer outreach events and grassroots engagement so we can grow this into a social movement. Next slide, please. So we have the webinars, and this is the third of our series. And if you go to that QR code, if you hold your phone up to it now, you'll be able to go to the fourth webinar and book a place on the webinar, which is about discussing stigma in third level education. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so first of all, I want to introduce you to Nell. Nell is a woman with a huge amount of experience in this area, and I'll leave it to Nell. I was talking to Nell earlier. I think I'll leave it to Nell to do her own introduction, and she's very welcome. I know she does a lot of work up in the northeast, and Derek on our team was very keen to get Nell speaking to us. So Nell, you're very welcome today, and I'm keen to hear what you have to say on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Nell McDonough, and I'm a member of Mead Travellers Workshops, the longest serving member of the organisation. I've been involved since 1987. And we're the oldest traveller organisation in the country. We're established immediately after the 1963 Commission on Itinerancy. Throughout my work in life, and I was only about 18, I think, barely 18, when I started working with the organisation. I've held many different positions and worked in different roles from early childhood right up to what I'm doing at present. And my work now is mainly family liaison with severely disadvantaged families. So these are the families who are mainly affected by the mental health issues, by the domestic violence, by the drug and alcohol abuse, isolation, exclusion even from within their own community. So mental health is an area that I would live and work in on a daily basis. I also deliver a traveller's culture awareness training. And I just wanted to say, we are all very aware of the horrific statistics around mental health, and particularly in our community. I mean, when we look at it, there are only 42,000 Indigenous Irish travellers living in the island of Ireland. So 42,000. We constitute less than half of 1% of the population of Ireland. And yet the statistics around suicide in our community is something like 11 point something, or almost 12% of our community. So per capita, that is it's unreal to imagine it. And I've often, through my meeting with people, and often I meet people the length and breadth of Ireland, and I've been to England and various other places delivering cultural awareness training. And in my opinion, as a traveller woman, as a traveller of my age group, I mean, I'm a great-grandmother, I honestly believe that in order to do anything constructive and positive, we really need to be addressing and delivering cultural awareness training for the service providers, for the educators, for people that have any contact whatsoever with the travelling community, with anybody that's providing a service. Because if you do not know the people that you are working with, and if you know, like, we can all design programs, and I admire people who do that, and fair play to them. But we have to be aware of the community that we're providing it for. Because, and unless cultural awareness training is delivered by travelling people themselves, it's not going to work. We've seen it didn't be delivered. People speaking on the travellers on this webinar will tell you, any organ will tell you that where cultural awareness training on behalf of Indigenous Irish travellers has been done, it's never worked, because it needs to be peer-led. It needs to be it needs to come from the people affected by the issue. So unless we are going, I couldn't express loud enough and plead with you that every single organisation in this country and further afield, like I'm going to England next week to deliver cultural awareness training. I actually couldn't express the need enough for it should be a priority when it comes to mental health and mental health delivery of services. Travellers should be included in a real and positive way, and travellers it should be traveller-led. Because if we do not, if we've no understanding of the community, and really and truly you have to be part of the travelling community in order to understand what's happening. We're dealing with isolation. We now are dealing with that horrific first Commission of Itinerancy in 1963. Now, 1963 sounds like donkey's years ago, millions of years ago. But we are now, as a travelling community, living and dealing with the fallout of that campaign. The very, very first line of the Commission of Itinerancy was the very open line of this commission was, if we are to do anything about the existence of these people, we need to rehabilitate and re-assimilate them back into normal society. So our existence as a community, first of all, was a negative. We, by a very fact that we existed. And to make us normal people, we had to be fixed and mended and brought back in. So, and we are now in 2025, still living to that. We're still dealing with that. And I am a firm believer that that is why in our community today, that the traveling communities, the mental health statistics in our community it couldn't be any, it's horrific. And I believe it's because we have internalized that oppression, that negative attitudes, that we were never good enough. We were, even to exist, we had to change. So we are still dealing with that. And despite all of the powerful work that's been done around this country, I couldn't stress enough the urgency for cultural awareness training to be delivered by the Irish travelling people themselves to every single organisation that exists and that's going to exist for the future. If we are to bring any positive change, if we are to do anything about the mental statistics, we need to look at that. I'm open for any questions.
Thanks, Nell. Do you want to talk a bit more about maybe one or two experiences you've had where you've noticed that, you know, the difference it makes when you put the voice of a real person at the center of the conversation?
I think it's unimaginable the positive effect when you actually are inclusive of the persons and the peoples that are affected by these mental health issues, because they're hid away. The mental health has a huge stigma even to the name, and within our community, even our own families don't want any publicity around mental health, and because it's a stigma that kind of, what's the word? But it's kind of like almost as if we're bringing shame on the family by admitting that mental health issues, and particularly around our young men. So when you include the people, when you're inclusive of the people, let the people tell their own story. Nobody can tell our story, only the travellers themselves. And when we have included travellers as valid representatives of their own issues, their own community, or extent, we live in family groups. So when we include travellers to speak on their own behalf, that's when it becomes real. And that's when it gives ownership to the people affected by mental health issues. And we all are in some ways, but there are families, there are more people, some people who are quite comfortable in speaking, quite comfortable in taking part in webinars like this, quite comfortable in attending seminars or organising events. But the majority of Irish travellers are not comfortable with that, because not from country people, and I say country people, which is a respectful term for non-travellers, when they're not concerned about the country people hearing them speak, or hearing the issues affecting them as a family or as an extended community. They're concerned about travellers. So if I discuss a mental health issue in my family, there's an immediate, oh my God, she's bringing shame on us. She's, like nobody wants to talk about it. So we have to do it in a way. And where we have done that, where we have included travellers, and where we have given the voice to the traveller and let travellers speak, we have seen the huge positive step that has taken. Yeah. Unless we do that, I mean, nothing is going to work. Because we will be forever hiding behind doors. We will forever be, please, it's bad enough what I'm dealing with, but I don't want the world to know what I'm dealing with. And I particularly do not want travellers to hear, because it's going to make me a less valued member of my community. It's going to put a huge stigma on my family. So nobody wants to talk about it. And this is why we look at the prison service, and we have the amount of reoffending, we have the amount of travellers, actually travellers going to this extent of changing their names in order to be identified as travellers. Travellers going into schools and not be identifying as a traveller because they believe they will be accepted much more easier. Where that has been turned around on its axis, and where we have gone in with the living history projects to schools, where we have delivered the cultural, then it's on them programs that we give the children and the adults and everybody in our community right across the board a pride in themselves. And it takes away that internalized belief that you were never as good as, you were never normal, you were never to be accepted, you had to become somebody else.
Yeah.
So I do think that I couldn't stress enough in
And
the importance.
Now, you're talking about a lot of stuff that's already been evidence-based out there. You know, the Lancet did a big review on stigma in mental health and mental illness, and they said two things that really struck me. One is when you hear the voice of somebody who's lived and walked the reality, that it changes your perception, because you realise you've more in common than you don't, whether that's being a member of the traveller community or experiencing a severe mental illness or whatever, that actually it can have, you know, that we all have similar lives and similar understanding. And the other thing that you've said, which is really important, is, and again, the Lancet research pointed to that, and our first webinar was about that, is the fact that we need allies, we need people in the health services, the social services, all the support services, to actually be that strong person and offer allyship in the messaging and the understanding. So even though you're saying the voice of your community is important, it's also to have people to support and give space for your voice to be heard is key.
Absolutely, because we cannot do this. We as travellers cannot do this on our own. We cannot do it on our own. We cannot do it in isolation. We need the people to have access to the different services. We need the people to have access to the different supports. We have to do this in partnership.
Yes.
But we have to give the voice to the traveller, you know, because it's only from the traveller that really and truly we get the real story.
Great. And I'm conscious now that you have to move on to something else in a little while, so you won't be able to be around for the Q&A session. So that's why I'm asking you the questions now. But I really want to thank you for all of the work you've put into advocating on this issue over the years, and it's really important work and we all appreciate it. Now I'm going to hand over to my next group of speakers. Thanks very much, Nell, for that.
Thank you very, very much.
Yeah. And my next group of speakers, can I get the slide up there, please? Okay. So our next group of speakers is John O'Brien and William Lawrence from Exchange House. So we know Exchange House, Ireland's National Traveller Service, is an organisation of traveller and non-travellers and a leading provider of frontline and support service to some of the most marginalised travellers in Ireland since 1980. They're a multidisciplinary frontline service offering education and training services, children and young people services, family support and crisis intervention services, addiction services, and the National Traveller Mental Health Service. Exchange House also deliver partnership services through training, provision of expertise, and dual working with other organisations providing services to travellers in Ireland. Exchange Houses, their aim is to break down barriers and discrimination in order to facilitate travellers to access the range of services they need in an equitable way. So they've been providing this professional standard of practice for 40 years now at this stage, which is a great achievement. So again, like Nell's organisation, the Exchange House has been around for a long time. So John and William, I want to thank you for agreeing to speak at today's event, and I'm going to hand the floor over to you, and you're very welcome.
Thanks very much, Nicola. Good to see you and everyone else, and just a big thanks to Shine for asking us to participate in today's discussion. So you've kind of given an intro to the service there, and I suppose one of the key pieces for us, and Nell touched on the allyship, is the traveller and non-traveller working together, and I think that's the really key piece, because it's that I suppose is a reflection of how it should be in wider society. It shouldn't be just an isolated piece, and I think for a large part the traveller issues that are existing today have been left to the traveller community and traveller organisations to sort out. And while that's really important to have the traveller organisations and the community front and centre, it's much bigger than that and needs much greater support at all levels. So yeah, myself and William both work for the National Traveller Mental Health Service, which is funded through the National Office for Suicide Prevention. It's directly, I suppose, comes from the Connecting for Life National Suicide Strategy. And again, as I suppose most people on the call will know, travellers are identified as a priority group under it. Obviously, the Connecting for Life is under review at the minute, and a new suicide prevention strategy is in the making, and we would hope to see far greater, I suppose, actions and resources put into the impact suicide is having on travellers, because I don't think there's a traveller family. Certainly, I'm 8 years working directly with the community, and I don't think there's a family I've met which hasn't been impacted directly by suicide. And yes, we have the stats, and the evidence is there. You know, so like if it was happening to any other community or any other group, I think the response would be far greater and far more urgent. And I suppose that's part of the appeal is to try to get more of the allyship, or grow the allyship for more organisations to engage in things like Nell talked about, the cultural awareness training, and engage, I suppose, in cultural humility and practice cultural humility. And I suppose that comes from a values base, number one. But you know, taking people for who they are is so important, and removing. We all have our prejudices and biases, I suppose, but it's trying to remove them and reduce them as much as possible when you're working with any community. But I suppose in this scenario, particularly the traveller community. So just touching on the suicide issue within the community, and the supports and services that we offer here, we would, I suppose, talk a lot about the cradle to grave nature of the services, because we offer right the way from access programs, right the way up to training and education. There's a youth service here, as you pointed out, and then our own service. And I suppose that the key piece in all of that is the multidisciplinary nature of it, and also the partnership nature of it, both internally and externally to Exchange House Ireland. So in particular, you know, I suppose we could talk a lot about the intersectionalities piece that exists within the community, and you know, I suppose our service users, the profile is very much, you know, the community is marginalised on a whole, but our service users, we would talk about the marginalised within the marginalised. So you're talking about people in prison or in the justice system. You talk about LGBT, the travellers within the LGBT community, talk about homelessness, talk about addiction. That's a large cohort of the direct supports we provide, and within that then there's a mixture of disciplines to support that, from peer support workers to social work, family support, counselling, and so on. And that's the key piece that I suppose that we would really work to. So generally, and I suppose a lot of our cases, that certainly the individual service users will access our service looking for support around accommodation and homelessness, because, well, not only is it a national emergency, it's within the traveller community, it's on another level altogether, the accommodation piece. And as quite rightly, as going back to Nell's conversation, we are dealing with the fallout of the 1960s, which I suppose a lot of us can't see, but that's ultimately what we're dealing with, the repercussions of today. And that accommodation piece that people present to get support with here inevitably leads to all of the other pieces of the jigsaw that need help putting together. And that's where, you know, having the insights from colleagues who are from the community and insights from, I suppose, the different expertise levels, and marrying that all together, you know, to try and provide the best possible services. So it could be somebody in homelessness who have just been released from prison, who has been in addiction, who has experienced more than likely significant trauma in their life up to that point, and trying to you know, glue all those pieces together to provide the right supports to that person. So yeah, off, I don't know, we're going off track there a little bit, but yeah, or if you want to go in with a question around it there, but yeah.
Now, I suppose what is important to you for other people to understand about when somebody from the travelling community is availing of services? What would be like 2 important pieces of advice you'd give?
Yeah, I suppose it's as talking about people being trained and knowing a little bit about travellers and being respectful. Like, the last thing you want when you have to go and ask for help is you have to explain what you want to help for in terms of mental health, what you're suffering. But then you all have to explain about your culture and about being a traveller and what about what's kind of Nell touched on earlier on, like about the shame and the stigma around talking about your mental health. And as a traveller man myself who have gone through mental health problems, it's not worse when you face someone across the table and he's asking you about big fat gypsy wedding or some other stupid type of thing when you're there looking for help and seeking help. So I suppose it's people being respectful, in terms of and having knowledge of the community and not the gossipy pieces of the community, and asking you about fist fighting or things what is not relevant, I suppose, and why'd you buy the big dress? All these kind of silly things I find, were not appropriate when you're there to talk about a serious issue. I suppose just a little bit about my own work. I suppose I work a lot of my work is within the prisons. I'm a youth mental health worker, but I also am a prison support worker. And me and my colleague, when we run a travel support group in Mountjoy with the focuses on mental health. And I suppose one of the things for me is working with groups. If you create the right conditions, men will come and they will talk about it, but the conditions have to be right and they have to be, you have to be make it safe and make it, understand what is confidential and things like that. And a sad thing for me is when we look at the statistics, like traveller men represent 10% of the prison population. When you think about we represent less than 1% of the total population. Women represent over 15% of the prison population. I'm not sure the numbers in Overstown, but at one stage, I think it was like about 26 young people were travellers in there. Like, it's very sad to see we have more people going to prison in the community than going to third level education. And we need to kind of look at why that is. And when I think about myself, and Nell touched on earlier on, I have a young lad who was 19, working towards an apprenticeship, was in secondary school, and he had to hide the fact he's a traveller. And them type of things chip away with you. I suppose when you're going out for events, for whole communions and Christmas, and you're bringing your children and you're being turned away, children want to know why. I have a niece who was 6 years of age who was listening to other girls in her class talk bad about travellers, and she didn't understand she was a traveller. No one sat down and told her you're a traveller. She was only 6 years of age, and I suppose we've lived in houses for a long time. And so she had to be explained she was a traveller. So it was very kind of to hear 6-year-olds talk about that negatively about travellers. Like, where are they hearing that? It's all negativity. And for young traveller children who are in school listening to that, over the years, that's chipping away, and it is affecting mental health. Like, in the last few years, I've lost 2 relatives by suicide, and it's just like, it's heartbreaking to see. We're seeing it all the time. Since I got this job in Exchange House Ireland, I'm here for about 5 years now. I was 2-3 years on a CE scheme, and now I'm part of the mental health team. Like, the amount of suicides, I think it was last year, it was like 33. A couple of years before that was 37. Do you know what I mean? This year, we're like, some of the numbers we're taking, like, I've heard of 16, but we're thinking it's an awful lot more. Do you know what I mean? So like, it's saddening, and I suppose what I do when we think about mental health, we try to think of positives, and we're talking with people and they first pick up the phone here, they're looking for help, for accommodation. But when you sit down and chat them, it's a multiple of issues, like jumping from addiction, conflict, prison, and all that. And we want to, like, you're trying to address that. You want to create hope for the future. A part of my work, I was involved in designing a youth mental health service. And we went out and we worked around 5 regional areas around the country, and we're asking young people what they want and what they think the issue was. And it came back like the lack of hope in the community. What's the point staying in school when you won't get a job, when you have to hide who you were? High profile organizations having a list of names where they won't give young people jobs, things like that. Another sad thing is, at this day and age, we're seeing young people, like some of the young people now involved in the program, can't read and write. they've went to school and they're leaving school. They're being took out from the age of 5 or 6 for meant to be special help 1-on-1. But all it's doing, it's showing them they're other. It's othering people. Do you know what I mean? They're lesser than everyone else, and they're not getting the help they should be getting.
Yeah. That's really helpful.
Sorry, I think a large part of the stigma which we often find, or a large thing that feeds into the stigma, is the lack of knowledge there to support people. So William touched on the mental health program, and what we found in that was when young people want to seek help, if they're worried, stressed, down, or feeling depressed, suicidal, they are more than likely, going to turn to someone they know, i.e., a parent, a family member, sibling, or someone within their peer network. When we then talk to the peer networks or the adults about that, and delighted as they would be that their young people would come to them for help, there's just a lack of capacity there to support that help. So inevitably it might arise to say, well, do you know what, toughen up, or you'll be all right, sleep on it. So part of that lack of capacity is there because the community hasn't been supported enough to be trained in areas around mental health, or not even mental health, just basic help seeking, what avenues to go if somebody is struggling, who to pick up the phone to, who to support, because there has inevitably been an experience, or a number of experiences that have been discriminatory. And again, William touched on young people. We supported the Limerick Traveller Network to carry out a research piece on traveller education and children's journey through education in Limerick City. And we were finding there parents prepping children entering into junior infants, so prepping their children to be ready for experiencing racism in the schoolyard. And that is just, so for someone who's not a traveller, I think, I find it so embarrassing, number one, but I also find it so sad and so a real indictment of where society is at. And that's not just, I suppose the study was carried out in Limerick, but we hear that nationwide, and all too regular occasions. So that piece is enormous, the racism and discrimination piece, but also then we really need to champion the community to be the drivers for change and be at the forefront of tackling the issues, I suppose.
I think it's really interesting because the words like pride and hope are so important to this conversation. And I think I was at a talk recently to do with neurodiversity and neurodivergence, and I heard the word neurodistinct, as in that difference is a badge of pride now, and valuing that difference and what it can add to the conversation. I think it's about shifting and seeing that difference offers more than sameness, and that whole the importance of diversity in organizations, in communities, in groups, that it's really important, and that there's a value and a pride put on that, and we need to move towards that kind of a conversation. We're a good way off, especially if you have, you mentioned intersectionality, if you have multiple things that can feel or be stigmatized either by yourself or others, in that if you have a disability, a physical disability, and experience mental health challenges, and are a member of the traveller community, and if you are LGBTQ, well, that is, life becomes more and more difficult because you have multiple challenges, and we need to really acknowledge the difficulties that are in that, But I do think that literacy is a key issue, and there is stuff that we can really work together as a community to drive and be conscious of. That if you have literacy issues, you're embarrassed when you're availing of services, if you're getting a form to fill out, or and that it's to be aware of the issues that affect people and make them disengage with services as well. It really is. So also, I was really reminded of last year in our Mental Health Media Awards, a documentary just won an awful lot of the awards, and it was the story about Patrick, a young traveller lost, the Alan Bradley documentary. I watched that documentary multiple times, and I thought it was a great, the data and the strikingness of the story and how unfair, conversations can be, and the difference that when people are much more aware of and understand the needs of others. And again, it's others and otheringness that we need to look at as well. But really helpful. And thank you, John and William, for what you have to say on that issue. I'm now going to go over to Bridgie and we'll do questions at the end. So if I can welcome Bridgie to this conversation. And Bridgie is from the sunny southeast. I hope it's sunny down there at the moment, Bridgie.
It's not.
Is it not? God,
No.
that's a disappointment. So Bridgie is a support worker for traveller parents. She runs the Parents Plus programme around Wexford. She also works with traveller children under the age of 6 to help get them into school and play school, covering the south of Wexford. So you work in lots of different ways with young people, and Bridgie is someone who works closely with us in Shine, and Catherine Byrne down in the southeast said we had to get Bridgie on this webinar. So you're very welcome, Bridgie, and I'll let you take the floor and give your insights into this conversation.
Okay, well, thanks very much everyone for watching me. But I work as a parent support worker, and I'm going off to the subject a little bit about mental health, but I do find as working with travellers that it works so well. Like, travellers working with travellers is 100%. They're able to understand you. But if you're explaining something, they're able to get it like that, other than maybe if someone else explained it to. If I go up to someone's door, maybe to ask them, do they want to put their children into school? I'm offered in, and you want tea, you want something to eat. And travellers among each other are very welcoming between each other, like. But it's just social exclusion is the big thing too. Also services, like if you feel like going for a cup of tea, there's probably maybe a certain cafe that you can only go to. Do you know, like, you're not, it's not like it's not normal for everyone else to just say, come on, we go for a meal, and they don't get that choice. My daughter was getting married last year, and I do think sometimes it's after getting better, in schools and other people understanding more about travellers and all, and then something will hit you. Like, last year I was trying to get my daughter married, and I got a lingering debt trying to get somewhere for her. I understood the rest of it, right, about not getting a place for her and trying to, but when it came to getting someone to make me a cake, I couldn't get someone to make me a cake. And I went on Facebook, and like, you see reviews of people that make cakes and stuff. No, not one person to make me a cake. I ended up getting someone that actually makes cakes for travellers. So, like, that's the kind of way we're caught. If you don't know someone that'll do it for you, you forget about it. But I do love getting the children into school and play school. And I do notice that maybe a child didn't get play school. Like, sometimes people think that they don't send their children to school because it don't look good from the outside that they don't send their children to school, but they actually don't send their children to school so young because it's out of love they keep them. It's not out and bad, like. And I've noticed getting some children into school, like, this is where it all starts. First of all, they're odd in the room. Maybe they didn't get play school, so it's hard for them, like what John was saying there earlier on about having to tell and explain to children that they're a traveller before they start school. No one else have that challenge, like, no one else has to, do you know what I mean? But I really do believe it should start in schools, because everything comes back down to the way you're reared. And I think if a traveller could go in and talk to baby infants, even give them a book, it should start there. That's where it starts. Also, parents have to have kind of the same outlook. You think you're spreading the word sometimes, and then something will hit you in the face. Like you think sometimes, all right, traveller accepted here or there, maybe they're only saying it, but when you go in, you're not. You have all that as well. But mental health, I see that everywhere I go. And I have a sister who suffers very bad with mental health as well. And suicide, I've seen an awful lot of that down here in Wexford, and especially in the last 3 months, it's all been men, all young men as well. So cultural awareness is very important, I think. I'd love to see it happening in the schools, like in baby infants. I think that would actually, that's where you need to start. It is. You need to start where, because I remember starting school and they played Tinker's Germs all day. To tip off you then, and the whole break time then Tinker's Germs. I don't care about that. I'm toughened to it, but I'd hate to see the children this day and age going through it. And I guess maybe travellers that have mental health and then they're socially excused. They get socially excused. Like, it would feel like they're probably away with themselves. Maybe someone that lives on their own, or all different scenarios. But I think isolation is the big thing, you know. I'd like to see that barrier broken.
Bridget, that's really important what you're saying. Like it's that phrase, isn't it, about you can be lonely on your own or you can be lonely in a group of people. And
right.
you were all mentioning allyship, and I read a piece earlier this week, and it's nothing to do with the traveller community, but I just think it's really important. And it was written by Dr. Katrina O'Sullivan from Maynooth this week, and she was talking about somebody who ran the Trinity Access program when she wanted to go to college, and she said that she wanted to talk about fighting for people, about being an ally and what it does for people. And she said, and then there was Irina Boydell, the lady who ran the Trinity Access Programme foundation course I attended, who turned up at my bedsit in Dublin when I refused to attend the final weeks of college due to relapse, who insisted that I come back, who had told me she would drag me to my exams if she had to. The day changed me forever. Seeing her fight for me, making space for me, encouraging me, made me feel valuable and worth something. And she says, in equity and equality work, you might call this allyship. Being an ally means that you're in a position of power and you actively support and advocate for people who are marginalised. Allyship is not an abstract concept for me. It changed my life. It made me feel valuable and worth something. And I think it's important that, a lot of people on the call on this webinar, and I've seen the numbers are, people have stayed on it. Sometimes people join webinars and then go, but people are staying on this because you've interesting things to say. But to ask people who are not members of the traveller community to be an ally, to step up, is really key, I think, in making a difference and getting rid of that othering of people, Bridget, can I ask you, just as a parent, is it important? My children would not know what a member of the traveller community is. People are people. And am I doing wrong as a parent by raising my kids that way? Or because I'm trying to make the world an equal and fair place? And, but what would be important for me in giving messages to my children?
All you have to do, Nicola, is just not, you don't even have to explain too much to the children. All you have to do is just not be prejudiced yourself.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Because I really believe that's where the children pick up. Like, I remember playing out on the street years ago. My mother, like, we wouldn't have had a whole lot, but we were right. My mother always kept it. We all had long hair, and she'd always keep it in a plait, so we wouldn't get head lice.
Yeah.
And I remember playing out on the street, and a mother ran out and got the daughter that I was playing with, and she said, "Come on, quick, you'll get nits off her." And that's another. I remember my sister wanted to be a hairdresser. She was told no, because people won't want travellers doing their hair. All that's changing, yeah, and it's nice to see it. You're doing exactly what's right with your children. If you're not prejudiced, they won't be.
No, and it's that bit of, you don't want people to be treated differently. Like, I just think we all were born the same way with 2 arms and 2 legs and the rest
It's
of it.
great
But
that you have that outlook,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they'll have the same outlook as yourself, Nicola.
Okay,
They will.
okay.
Um,
So I'm conscious, Bridgie, have you any other messages that you think it would be important for people to know about the issue of, getting rid of stigma in relation to communities like the traveller community?
relationship with services.
Yeah,
Travellers need better, like, services need. Look, why do people always say, like, all the travellers are cast the same?
yeah,
That's the thing that wants to be changed.
yeah,
Like, that's a big thing. They're all the same. Oh, we meet one bad traveller and they're all the same.
yeah,
It's not the case. Everyone is different. Everyone
Yeah.
is still different. There's fighting, like what John was saying earlier on. Sorry, your name's not John. Is it? No, I don't know. But that's like what he was saying earlier. I'm forgetting what you were saying earlier on.
It's easier just saying the gang in Exchange House.
Yeah. But no, look, at the end of the day, when I'm said and done, if travellers teach other travellers, works. That 100% works. And I'd love to see more of that. And that is around everything and around that. I've seen it's after opening up my eyes an awful lot doing this job and doing parent programs around County Wexford. Like, sometimes we meet parents that come in and they'd be very upset, and more times we'd have a bit of an out chat or a talk. It's all around social exclusion. Like I said, if they had a good relationship with services and services had a good relationship with them, like schools, for a start, schools, that's where it needs to start. That's where, if the discrimination, if it could be talked about more in schools, and as the kids grow up, you know what I mean, and that might eventually make a better world. You know.
So it's really helpful to, is there messages that you think would be important? Like, I'm thinking about, there's a lot of people on this call, and what would they be, say, if you could, I'll come to the 3 of you separately and ask you again for 2 key things that they need to write down and say that they're going to commit to support changing things. I'm really struck when I go to rooms and I'm talking to large groups of members of the traveller community. I'm struck by the grief and the loss. It's overwhelming at times. It's very overwhelming when you're in a room full of
sick children as well, you know.
Yeah.
And there's something, right? If there's already an understanding in the travelling children, right? And if a 5-year-old, a traveller 5-year-old, walked out on that street day and seen a man or maybe another child in a wheelchair, that 5-year-old have very, very good, that travelling child have so much understanding for another sick child. Like, that's there. I don't see that there much in, like, country people. I'm not, like, you know yourself, but they haven't, and I think it's because they do be sick children within, and mental health around the travellers, that a young child is just have, like, that's what should be in the schools, like that same understanding for other people. Yeah.
And so it's really important then that the message, even about the green ribbon and your own campaign around the road to hope and change, is about the fact that if we make it okay to speak about experiencing mental illness, that we all can have an experience at different stages in our lives, and if we don't,
it's very hard for travellers to talk about their own mental health.
It is. And if we can all do that and encourage each other, and it often starts with talking about your own experience, and that's it, you know.
Can I just say, that's why when travellers work with other travellers, like another traveller might be more open to talking to me about their mental health than they would you, and that's why travellers working with travellers works.
It does work. And I'm going to come over to Will and John. Have you a couple of takeaways that you want to, because I'm not seeing questions coming in the Q&A section. So other than somebody's asked that we show the QR code again at the end for next week's webinar, which I think is good. They've obviously enjoyed this one. But for John and William, is there 1 or 2 key takeaways that you want people to take from today's conversation?
Yeah, I suppose if I start, sorry. So I suppose I touched on earlier about the importance of creating hope for young people going forward in terms of education, employment. Do you know what I mean? So they'll be able to have that hope and not be always negativity. We touched earlier on, I think Bridget talked about, like, do you know what I mean, about going into schools and to be more of a celebration of travellers instead of always the negativity, more celebrations of the culture, because it's a lot of negativity around. And I've seen both actually in the prisons and in some schools recently, intercultural days, a lot more celebration about Ireland's become more intercultural, but it's no celebration about travellers. They're never included in that. Do you know what I mean? So we're great at accepting, celebrating everything else, but we won't celebrate travellers, and we're an ethnic group. So it'd be great to see that pair of intercultural days, what it'd be something about travellers. And I suppose the importance of individuals from services, like myself, I backed education in 2012. I couldn't read and write. It was around time I was struggling with mental health, and I was nearly going to give up very quickly. But one teacher, very positive, constantly supportive, constantly. I think if you're that person you quoted earlier on about the access teacher going back and kind of encouraging her to turn up, that person done that for me, kept me engaged, always kind of supported me, and that made me continue. And I suppose I was very lucky to get the opportunity to exchange house and have a job now, and I'm able to support my own family and not be dependent on anyone else. So I think that is for the importance of individuals as well when they're working with clients.
Great. And yourself, have you anything to add to that?
Thanks, Nicola. Yeah, I suppose you touched on grief and loss there, and in today's, certainly in our sector, trauma informed is playing more and more of a role in the services and the supports that we provide. And I suppose understanding if you are working with a traveller or a traveller presents to your service, that person is coming more than likely with a significant layer of trauma, because the levels of trauma right across the community are, I don't think we have any evidence kind of underpinning it in terms of peer-reviewed literature or anything, but that the levels of trauma that the traveller community have are significantly higher than your general service user. And I suppose the other thing, just I suppose pointing on my own personal story, so I started working with travellers specifically 8 years ago, and it was just after a period of working in the UK for 5 or 6 years, and my own youngest child was born in the UK at the time. And I remember when we were in the UK making that decision whether or not to move back to Ireland, one of the things was the structure in UK society, and it was play dates, and it was very kind of structured in terms of your day-to-day or even your recreation time. And as someone who's grown up from a small village in the middle of Ireland, very much rural Ireland, and it was kind of rock up to your friend's house or call around to your neighbour, and you don't need an appointment, you just call in. And I remember, so it was March 2017, and I just started working on the local project in Alford Town, and I was brought down to a family who still live on the site in Alford, and would have known them through sport and GA growing up. Well, it was straight in the door of the trailer, sit down, cup of tea, do you want a sandwich? It was a real kind of like Irish setting. And I suppose the piece that it hammered home to me is that certainly for Irish society was Irish life for me. That's the culture I grew up in. You know, it was that kind of welcome, the door is always open, come on in, that kindness, that humility. So it makes us more like them when we are different. And I think that's the piece that we seem to have forgotten, because we've created differences right across society. And in a day when society has been so polarized and we're being pulled to be different things, like, you know, just understanding that we're more like them, we're different, and we feel the same. Pain is pain, you know, and showing kindness and humility around that, I think is you know, should be front and center of what the service you're providing.
Thank you for that. I just, you know, we're run out of time, but there's a lovely message after coming in the Q&A box from somebody in attendance here, and I want to thank him for what he's written. He said, "I should have said, well done all. Great to hear the lived experience. The stories tell how important it is to treat everyone as a person, and each individual brings a unique value." And I think it's a lovely note to end this on, and to encourage people to be allies, supporters, to make a difference, to be that one good person that will actually bring people through challenging times. I want to thank Bridgie, John, William and Nell. It's been a really interesting webinar, and I wish you all the best in your own campaign. But thank you so much for giving such great insights today. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Right.
All the best.
Thanks,
Thanks
everyone.
everyone, all the best.
Thank you.